All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to sight your bow in if you've never done it before. Just kind of the basics of what you need to do in order to get on the target and get sighted in. Step one, place target. Some fresh deer poop. Hope he doesn't walk in front of my target. Step two is to get a bow. Now, your bow might have a different number of sights than this. You could have a 5-pin, 3-pin. You could even have a single pin where you can adjust the distances with that. We're going to be doing a 3-pin here. The concept's kind of the same regardless, but your top pin is going to be your closest shot. So because the bow is going to be aimed down more at the target, you're lowering it to hit the target where you're aiming. You're going to be shooting lower. As you aim towards the bottom pin, you're obviously lifting the bow up higher to get the pin onto the deer, so it's going to shoot much higher. So your top pin is your closest shot, and if you have no clue where you're at, either way, you're going to want your first shot to be about 10 yards just to see where you're hitting. So we'll go do that now. I should also mention that you're going to want a rangefinder. You can try to pace it, but a rangefinder is going to be much easier and much more accurate for getting the distance of where you are from your target. So we're going to get 10 yards away. We're going to shoot and aim just right at the middle of the target. If you have a larger target, that's obviously more ideal if you are not sighted in whatsoever, if you've never even shot the bow. Or you could just try to have a backstop of some sort if you really aren't sure that you're going to even hit the target. Aim lower on the target just because it'd be better to hit low than high. All right, so we're just going to shoot right in the middle, and we are good hitting the target. If you're a little off to the left, right, high, low, whatever it is, that's okay if it's close. So as long as you're kind of in the middle ring still, even this bigger ring, that's a good starting point. And we don't necessarily want to sight in our first sight at 10 yards. So as long as it's in a general area, that's okay. We'll take some steps back and then see, how much more off it is, and then really start sighting it in more for 20 yards for the top sight. If it's like far off, if you're hitting way over here to the sides, we should at least get it honed in slightly before scooting back, because you might just completely miss the target. So I will show you now what you need to do if you need to make an adjustment. Let's just assume really quick that we hit like here. I'm gonna stick it there and show you. So we're high and we're way left. So both need to move. There's going to be a couple screws on your sight, and so I'm going to show you what each does. So first of all, we can move each individual pin itself. So I can move just that top pin, or we can move them individually. Or we can slide the entire sight up and down as a unit, or left and right as a unit. So we're just going to sight in the individual pins at this point. And so if you turn your bow to the side, that's going to be these individual ones here. So obviously the top one is going to move that one up and down. And so I'm going to use an Allen wrench that fits that size correctly, and I'm going to have to move it. Now, where do you move it? Do you move it up or do you move it down? So the way you sight a bow in is let's just say that the pin, I know it's kind of out of focus, the target, but if I'm aiming the top pin at the center, that's where I wanted to hit, I need to move towards the direction of where my arrow actually hit when I'm trying to adjust the sight. So that means, try to focus this a little, that means I will need to move the sight up and to the left. And that is going to help me adjust when I then aim at the target. So because I'm going to move that pin up higher, it's going to force me to bring my bow down to get that pin back into the target, which means I'm going to hit lower. Does that make sense? And then the same is true for left to right. Because I'm going to move that pin to the left a little bit, it's going to cause me to move my whole bow to the right to get onto center, and then I will be shooting more to the right. So how do you move your sight from left to right? Well, you do want to make sure you get this part right. If you loosen this screw, even though it's on the side, which might make you think that it's going to do the left to right, you're actually loosening this clamp here, which is going to adjust the up and down. So we don't want to touch that screw. We're moving these individually. Instead, it's going to be the top screw for moving left to right. So this top screw here is going to loosen this clamp, which is going to allow me to slide this whole part left to right. How much should you move it? Usually I just move very slight, a line or two on here, to the left or right, whichever way you got to go. Again, if you hit to the left, you got to move it to the left. If you hit to the right, you got to move it to the right. Tighten it back down, take another shot from the same distance, and just see how much it moved to get an idea. So move it a little to start, and then see how much it moves. And if you need to do quite a bit more, you can obviously move it more. All right, so once you're fairly on target at 10 yards, we're gonna wanna move back to 20, which is what you wanna sight your top sight in for. So even if you're sighted in at 20 and a deer's closer, you'll still be able to hit basically where you're aiming, even if you're at 10. Actually, the shot I took was a good example of that. That was me sighted in at 20, and you saw where I hit at 10. So it's gonna be very close from closer. So we wanna sight in that top sight at 20 so that I know anything within 20 yards. So I'm at 23 right here, so I'll take a few steps. So anything within 20 yards, I'm using that top sight all the way out to 20. And this can change slightly depending on your bow's poundage and speed, what you're shooting, how hard it throws the arrows. But in general, so for me, I'm going to be doing 20, 30, 40. So top's 20, middle's 30, and the bottom's going to be my 40 yard. So now we're going to shoot at 20, and I'm doing the same thing, just aiming at the middle. And again, we're in a good spot, so that means I don't have to move it. But again, you just do the same things we just talked about. If you're not in the center, then you will move it slightly. Now, I also recommend shooting a couple arrows, usually like 3, and get a grouping of 3. If you're a grouping of 3, you can put your hand around that grouping like this. That's a good grouping, and that's solid. You also can kind of tell where you're hitting based on that grouping. If you average it out, if my grouping's right here, kind of the center of that grouping is where I'm hitting. And so you kind of see where your grouping's at. So I'll actually do that now. I don't usually do that once I'm sighted in very often. I like to kind of aim at different spots so that I'm not potentially gonna split my arrows or hurt my fletchings. But when you're first sighting in, I don't mind taking a couple grouping shots just to kind of help you with the sighting in process. So let's leave that arrow in, and we'll take a couple more shots. Okay, back to 20. I'm gonna shoot one more. I don't know where that one hit, but I feel like I kind of pulled it. Let's go take a look. Yeah, I definitely pulled that third one like I thought. So the second one was much better. So here's an example. This one, I'll show you too. Well, I think it might have flown different. That one has a different practice tip on it, and it seems like it flew a little weird. So also keep note of those kinds of things. You want to kind of have, I've got a different knock on that one, but it seemed to fly fine, but the different practice tip. So just keeping note of that as you shoot too. If you've got some differences, you want to try to keep everything as similar as you can, but pretty good grouping, can get the hand around, all in the center circle. So I'm happy with that. All right, let's go back now to 30. So you'll do the same process at 20 yards and get really honed in. Try to get a decent grouping like that, where you're aiming at. And, if you're thinking like, oh, if my grouping's here, like, oh, that's fine, it's a good grouping. It's not just about having a good grouping. You got to be where you're aiming, because if you hit a deer 4 inches low, you're going to potentially skim its belly. If you hit a deer 4 inches high, you might be in the backstrap, especially if it ducks. So you really got to get honed in and have that grouping where you're aiming. So you're going to do that at 20 yards until you really get consistent and get good. And that's all you should be shooting a deer at to start until you get sighted in at the next sight and you're really confident there. But you also need to take shots in between sights as well to kind of see where you're hitting. So it gets a little challenging. This isn't as easy as some people think that it is. All right, so let's go to 30 now. All right, we will see how 30 is. I've only shot, this is a new bow to me, so I've only shot it at 30 a couple times actually. And I have not even sighted in 40 yet. Okay, happy with that. So that's 30 yards. All right, now for 40. And like I said, I have not shot at 40 yet. So we will see how this goes. And I'm just gonna use my bottom sight. And when in doubt, you can also hug that bottom sight to, or whichever one you're moving to. So if you're at your top sight and you're going down one, you could hug it up as close as you can to that top one to start. Just so that if anything you hit low, hopefully, and not go over the target. So, but I'm just gonna also aim at the bottom of the target right now, just in case it is a little high. A little hard to tell. I think I hit where I aimed. I could maybe shoot another one. I think I'll at least shoot another one at center mass now in the middle of the target because I didn't hit high at least. So I'm not too worried about going over. I think that last one might hit low. I think we're slightly low. I think it's close though. Huh, that's kind of interesting. My first shot's slightly high and my second two are slightly low. But you're also gonna, it's harder the further back you get. So it gets a little tougher to keep your grouping small. But these two, height-wise, I don't know, I'm not too disappointed with that. Left to right, at this point, I wouldn't really want to move it just because I got one on either side of the circle. So for me, the next step's going to be shoot 3 more, see what happens. All right. And also, once I get sighted in, once you get sighted in, even at these distances, doesn't mean you're good to go and then you stop practicing the rest of the season. You need to practice a lot because little things can change. You could be holding the bow slightly different. If you're not an experienced shooter, especially if you don't know about anchor points and all that, you're potentially gonna, really have to. It could get a little frustrating. And I've been there a lot. Everybody who's hunted and shot their bows a lot has been there, where, you get it all sighted in, you think, and then you come back and things are slightly off. And you got to slightly move sights and stuff. So it takes a lot of practice and patience. So don't think you're good once you get sighted in and it's done. And also, the more you shoot, one sec. The more you're shooting in one given session, like I am right now, you're going to start to wear down a little. So you got to keep that in mind. I kind of punched that last one. But that's all just to say, don't start adjusting your sights when you've got shooter's fatigue. If you got shooter's fatigue and you're worn out, you need to just call it a day, which is kind of, where I'm getting at right now, because especially the farther back you get. Again, little tiny movements going to make a big difference when you're further back. So I'm not ready to even move anything right now, even if things are a little off. Just because of that, I'd want to come out another day, shoot some more when I'm fresh, and maybe start at 40. But, I'm pretty happy with that because those first two, look at that grouping. The third one I punched. And that just goes to show you how much just one little mistake in your form can make. Look at the distance there. So you think about when you're in the woods and all your gear in a stand and you got a big deer in front of you, a moving target and something that's getting your adrenaline going. You punch the trigger, that can be the difference. So it's a tough sport. That's why you need to practice a lot, and especially, take it seriously if you're planning to get in the woods and try to actually kill something. It's not easy. You definitely could end up wounding something. I also should mention, you might have noticed on those 40 shots, I'm a little low. Like, I'm not dead center, I'm slightly low. But I don't mind actually leaving my 40 just a little low because, one, with the deer being that far away, I'm going to more likely aim kind of center of the deer just because it's farther. It's going to be harder to really, you're going to feel almost like you're aiming below the deer if you're really trying to aim at the heart behind the elbow. And so I probably naturally, I'm just going to not quite aim to, lower third. I'm probably going to be more in the middle, section of the deer behind his shoulder. And so that's already going to bring my arrow up. And then additionally, he's going to have way more time to react and duck. And so there's a good chance at 40, he's going to duck quite a bit. And so I say he, like I'm shooting a buck, but whatever, you know, if it's a doe, buck, whatever, there's a good chance they're going to duck at 42. So I don't mind actually being slightly on the low end when I'm shooting at 40. All right, let's see if I can get these corners. Slightly left on that one. All right, we'll see where those are, and then I'm gonna call it a day. I feel pretty good with where things are at for now, and definitely gonna get a little more shooting in before season starts. Double check everything, doing some between site shooting. For between sites, you know, you're gonna go to your 25, 15, 35, 45, all those spots, and you may have to pick a site. You know, if you're at 35, you may have to either use your second site named slightly high, or third site named slightly low, or actually literally aim between sites. And so that's kind of how that works, but you want to practice with those as well. Whew. Okay, just shows you 40. We're not there yet, so we're going to keep practicing at 40, but I'm going to save it for another day. But that's also, you know, that's my first time shooting that third site. I haven't touched that third site. It's just where it was when I got the bow, and so I might have to move it a little. But again, I don't necessarily want to right now, just because I don't know that I'm shooting the most accurately at the moment. So that's something I'll probably coming out starting at 40, seeing where I'm at when I'm fresh, and then making decisions on how I need to adjust. Yeah, so that'd be my recommendation there. But hopefully that helps you get started and to get on target, so that you can really start getting honed in on that 20-yard sight, and then work your way back, and eventually be slinging them from 40. You really don't, in my opinion, you could sight in farther than that and really get accurate, but you don't really need to be shooting deer past 40, especially getting past 45, 50, because again, the deer just have time to react to that. It's really hard to just account for all the variables. So that's just my 2 cents, especially as a beginner. I would recommend never taking a shot past 40 until you've killed plenty of deer and you've got lots of experience on your belt. So, all right, well, that's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one. Good luck this season.